This is Father Patrick Briscoe.
This is Father Joseph Anthony Kress.
Welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks to all who support us. If you enjoy our podcast, please consider making a monthly donation to us by becoming a Patreon benefactor. Be sure to like and subscribe to Godsplaining wherever you listen to your podcasts. Father Joseph Anthony, who's your favorite saint?
The Blessed Virgin Mary.
Okay, but like...
Saint Joseph.
Okay, but like...
Saint Dominic.
Okay, but like...
Saint John Paul II.
There we go. All right, so now we got to a saint of the modern era. But Saint Dominic is a little... I was pushing for like a saint who, really had what we would recognize as the modern process, the current process of canonization. But Saint Dominic actually had a process of canonization as well, in fact.
Kind of, yeah.
And that's
there are accounts
that's how we know what we know about him. You could read about that in a book I co-authored with another friar about Saint Dominic's way of life, path knowing and loving God. Anyway, most of what we know about Saint Dominic, we know because of the testimonies that were offered as part of his canonization process.
Right. He didn't leave a lot of writings. He didn't pen a lot of things. He didn't write the rule himself as a contemporary mendicant man from Italy did. We know a lot about St. Francis because of that. Right,
exactly.
St. Dominic didn't leave that stuff. So a lot of it came from the testimony of his holiness, of his virtue, from the brothers and those that knew him at the time of his canonization. So a lot of what we know about his kind of attributes, his leadership style, his holiness was from those kind of accounts of his canonization process, which is really interesting.
Have you ever been to a canonization?
I have.
We've been to the same one.
I was going to say we were at the same one. I'm pretty sure that
I don't think I was looking through. I've been to I was at the Beatification of Blessed Michael McGivney. I was there in New Haven. But other saints.
So we were both at the canonization of Blessed Junipero Serra.
Yes, exactly. During Pope Francis' 2015 visit to the United States.
That's correct.
Deacons.
We were deacons there. We distributed communion at that Mass.
While some of our brothers did other very beautiful things at the Mass, including made great contributions to the music. Shout out to you, Father James Moore. No other candidates. That kind of surprises me. I figured you'd have been to another one.
No.
I would have been at Blessed Carlo Acutis' canonization in April, but the Pope had to die, so that was sad.
Yeah, it switched up a little bit.
I'm sure that's what God intended in His providence, because I believe deeply that God directs all these things according to His providence. But,
yes.
But that means Blessed Carlo was twice delayed. This is the
what
thing
was the
about
first
Carlo
delay?
Acutis. COVID.
Oh,
His beatification was delayed. And now his canonization is also delayed.
Wild.
Yeah. So I don't know what that says to us.
He could be the saint of the imparted delay.
That's right. Yes. Yes, he could be a kind of patron saint of 2-hour delays for school children or something, I guess.
Yeah.
He was twice delayed. Carlo is certainly one of my favorite modern saints. I have a deep and abiding devotion to him. Actually, I have a little image of him here on my computer.
Yeah.
So
an eagle-eye viewer will be able to see that.
Got Blessed Carlo there.
Yeah.
And because of the different projects I work on, I created Blessed Carlo as a saint. So it's through Blessed Michael McGivney and through Blessed Carlo Acutis, I would say that I've gotten to know more about the causes of saints. That is the Church's path to canonization for men and women who have led exemplary lives of holiness. I think, which is what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about how this happens.
Yep.
But I think the place to start is actually by answering the question, or turning to the question, is what is the value of a saint to begin with? Why do we have this process? What is it about being a canonized saint in the Catholic Church that says something to Catholics?
I think it's a really interesting question, because I do think it's unique to our Catholic faith. We don't really find this process in Protestant churches. You don't find the Lutherans making decrees of holiness of their kind of faithful in any sense.
They do kind of. They have they have saint days they observe.
Yeah, but
it has a different sense for us, though. Admittedly,
and
you got to go to a more like anti-liturgical tradition to the evangelicals.
Definitely the evangelicals don't have any of that. But I think it is very unique to us in our Catholic faith, is to have this catalog or this roll of saints that we celebrate and we honor, and we tell the lives and the stories of that. We name our children after it. We name schools, and ministries take on certain patrons and this stuff. Like the life of the saints is very, very intimately woven into the Catholic experience, and it's very, very important for us. We also use terms, and especially after kind of John Paul II, we'll hear in the Second Vatican Council of like the universal call to holiness, or the fact that we're all called to be saints in this way, and that is holiness and sanctity is accessible for every person. And I think there can be, even though all that's true, like it's very important, but sometimes we can approach the saints in a canonization process from the wrong perspective. I think far too many times is that we look to the saints, or we hear this canonization and this decree of sanctity that a person is now called a saint, because it's like the Catholics' version of a Hall of Fame. Like they've done their job well, they did what they needed to, and now we're gonna like induct them into a Hall of Fame. We're gonna like put a halo over them, and put a few letters in front of their name, and now call them saint, because that they're some kind of reverence and Hall of Fame-esque ability. And that's not what this is about, right? This is not to set somebody apart in such a way that they're now kind of Hall of Famers, but it's to really do this for the glory of God, to show how his mercies, his fidelity to his people are always in every generation, and that it reflects the virtue and the graces that the Lord gives to people in every walk of life, as an encouragement to those still in this earthly pilgrimage. So it's not a decree of past accomplishments. It's not a decree of kind of, success or anything in this life. It is for the benefit of those still living this life, to give them a new kind of facet or optic through which to be encouraged towards their union with God.
Yeah, I like this point that you're making, that you're underscoring the understanding of the church that the saints are models of Christian perfection. The saints are models of holiness, not exceptions.
Yeah,
and I think that we often articulate this. I'm sure you learned this in Catholic school as I did, the distinction between the small s saint and the large S saint. Large S, that's a different word. Capital S saint. There's a small s saint, capital S saint. And so the small s saint being just every person who's in heaven.
Yes. And
the capital S saint meaning a man or woman whose holiness has been recognized as worthy for veneration by the church. And when you pointed out Lumen Gentium, when you were talking about the understanding of the Second Vatican Council that every Catholic is called to holiness, that being a Christian means desiring holiness. There's a beautiful line in Lumen Gentium that points to holiness as the infallible measure of the church's apostolic activity.
Ooh.
Which is very beautiful, because it means that we should expect saints. And that when we see saints and the places we discover saints are a kind of confirmation or encouragement in the life of the church in a particular place or under a particular mode. That's why we like so many of our own Dominican saints, because they're a kind of confirmation of our way of life. That's what I liked about the Dominican order. When I was looking at religious orders, I thought, these folks, these men and women who are the Dominicans, they got a lot of saints. There's something about this way of life that works.
It was attractive to me as well. I remember looking at that laundry list of saying like, oh, this way of life works. Like all I have to do is live the life and it works. Like it's been tried, it's been tested, it's true. Look, and here's the proof of that is all of these confirmed accounts of holiness.
I think one thing that's interesting, and what people might be very fascinated in when you ask this question of what does it mean to be a saint, is people are fascinated by the fact that there's a kind of laid out process. So do you want to take us through the 4 steps and kind of lay out what they mean? So here I'm thinking, beginning with being a servant of God, being proclaimed venerable, being declared a beatus, and then being declared a saint.
Yeah, I mean, there is a path. Like, I think that's the first thing is, like, there is a path for these kind of confirmations. of this. And so what we see is at the beginning of the path is it begins with what we call local cult, right? Now, cult not meaning like brainwashing of things like that, but cult meaning local veneration or local worship. So it kind of begins with those who knew the individual, those who interacted with them, worked with them, lived with them in their kind of experience of that individual's holiness and prayer life and virtue in that way. And so what they will do is, beginning with a kind of proximate experience in the locality of where that individual was, that they kind of begin in praying for this person, once again, to expedite and assist them into the heavenly glory of union with God in eternity. But then they begin to ask for their kind of intercession. They begin to reverence them. And it takes a kind of a growth and a wellspring to typically get to the point where it gets acknowledged by a local bishop. And that local bishop will say, hey, there is something here. And he'll do an investigation of that. And if he finds it to be worthy of this individual's life was worthy, it was a virtuous life, one filled with grace and virtue in that way, then they will kind of confirm this. And then they start what we call the process, the canonization process. And that begins when there's this investigation and they declare an individual a servant of God. And that's kind of the first step or the first declaration. It's kind of the wellspring of a local cult with a confirmation of a local bishop who then initiates the process by making a declaration saying, we've investigated this person's life, writings, works, those who knew them, and it's worthy of prayer, and we're going to declare this person a servant of God because their life was filled with virtue and grace.
Yeah, that's a great point, that the fact that this title has been bestowed on someone indicates that his or her life has already been understood by the local bishop as worthy of imitation. And again, that's the difference between the small s saint and the capital S saint. The small s saint is in heaven just like the capital S saint.
Yes.
But again, it's that the capital S saint lived a life in a particular way that can be a model. Now, there's been a debate about how long the church should wait before she canonizes someone. Now, right now, the church waits 5 years.
Roughly.
Unless it's waived, as it was in the case of John Paul II. Personally, out of my Dominican medieval sensibilities, I tend to err on the side that we should wait a very long time, that we should wait several decades, because canonizations become, by their nature, a very political process.
Yeah,
it costs a lot of money. These are two facts that you're going to have politics and money involved.
Yeah.
And the more removed we are from the immediate atmosphere of someone's life, I think the better in the long run for the church. Now, I say all that as being, again, someone who's very devoted to Carlo Acutis, who is literally our age, or would be if he were still alive today. So he's the millennial saint. And there is something behind the wisdom of the church that she would propose contemporary models for holiness and imitation. That's what Carlo brings to the table. Right. So I have a lot of sympathy for that.
And I love contemporary saints. I'm very, very much devoted to a lot of 20th century saints. Like, I have a certain interest in that. So like, I appreciate those things, but I do agree, like, it does behoove us to be patient. If this person, in the entire process of canonization, is to confirm that they are in union with God in eternity. That's what the declaration ultimately is about. That declaration isn't going anywhere. Like, they're not going there anywhere,
right.
They're still going to be there, so like, it's okay to be patient a little bit.
And that kind of local cult, as you were pointing out, can and should already grow.
Yeah. It's only going to get stronger.
We should be celebrating people for their holiness as soon as those around them recognize it.
Yeah. So once that kind of local decree by the local bishop, like, yes, this person is worthy of imitating. Their life was filled with virtue. Heroic virtue is one of the terms that gets thrown around a lot. Then they begin the process and kind of submit all of that investigation to now the Vatican. So it goes from a local diocese now to the Vatican. And there's going to be an initial process there where the Vatican will start a similar investigation, kind of having with the findings to see, okay, well, where are we at with all of this? Do they confirm the initial investigations, or is there more work to be done in that? And if they find that everything is okay, then they'll make a decree of this person now being venerable.
Right. So you make a good point here that there's the local phase, which could be the diocese, or it could be the religious order.
Sure.
Proposing for canonization, and that there's an advocate who is arguing for the saint's holiness, who prepares that documentation of the saint's life called the positio, and then all of that is taken by the cause and proposed to Rome for further evaluation.
Right.
So that advocate, by the way, is called the postulator. So the postulator gathers all that information, composes the positio, which is the life and or summary of the virtues of the saint in that first phase, generally called the diocesan phase, and then all of that's proposed to Rome. Okay, pick up.
So, like I said, after Rome gets that document, they confirm the investigation. It seems like everything is on the up and up. Everything seems good. They may then go and, let's say, accelerate the cause or further the cause by bestowing the title venerable.
And that's a papal declaration.
That's coming from the Vatican. That's a papal declaration.
The congregation, as we call them, dicasteries.
Yes, now they're dicasteries.
Saints.
So, and that's a major step, right? That means that the local investigation was worthy and was done well, and that from the Vatican they confirmed a lot of these things, right? Now, as that continues on, that means they'll move to the next phase of this. And while all this is happening, there should be, like we saw on a local, devotions increasing. And that's one of the kind of telltale signs are there more devotions? Are more people finding resonance with the way of life of this person? Are they asking for their petitions and interventions in prayer and intercessions in that way? And typically one of the easiest ways, or not the easiest, I would say, like it's a necessary confirmation in this, is the through the intercession of this individual, are there kind of miracles, right? When prayers have been entrusted to this person, have there been miracles associated with those prayers? And once there's confirmation of those types of things, very often we see the easiest way to confirm those are medical miracles. Those are the most common to find. Once there's a confirmation of that, then this person will be kind of elevated and declared beatified, right? So
yeah, that's
beatus.
like the next big level up, isn't it? One of the things that I think is very interesting, again, to underscore, is that here during this process, the church is not making someone holy. The church is recognizing the holiness of someone else. And that's why what I like about your point here that you're making about miracles is that miracles really are pointing, they're an indication. They're a sign of that holiness which is there. I mean, again, for something to be a miracle, the criteria are that it's instantaneous, complete, and lasting. Mm-hmm. And that's a big lift to have a medical miracle that satisfies all three of those things.
Person had this illness and disease, and then through the prayer and intercession, they don't.
And we want it to be documented.
Yes, very clear documentation.
The other point that I really like about miracles is that there's a theology at play here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't know this, and it isn't widely discussed, but it is known and understood, certainly by the Dicastery for Saints. There's a theology behind the miracles that the saints work and behind the miracles that are proposed for the veneration of saints. For example, Michael McGivney heals children and mothers.
Yeah.
Not exclusively, and of course his works are going to abound beyond that. But the miracle proposed for his beatification was the healing of a young boy who is now named Mikey, but who was diagnosed with a disease in utero. He was not supposed to survive the pregnancy.
Right.
At Michael McGivney's beatification, I sat with the family of this young boy in the rectory at St. Mary Church, which is where Blessed Michael McGivney served, with this boy in my lap. And we drew pictures. And I cannot get over the fact that this child, who ought to have been dead, was now 6 or 7 years old, however old Mikey was at that moment, and that we were just coloring together and having a grand old time. And that he was bouncing around. I remember his father carrying him on his shoulders through the streets of New Haven during the celebrations around the beatification. It's really a remarkable thing. Why children? Well, Blessed Michael McGivney was an advocate for Catholic families.
Yeah.
And he founded the Knights of Columbus to provide for family life so that these children wouldn't be put in state or Protestant orphanages where they would lose the Catholic faith. So Michael McGivney's whole thing was to provide an insurance company that could keep Catholic families together to provide for widows and orphans. So Michael McGivney has a kind of preference, if you will. There's a kind of theology that heals and protects children in the miracles that have been proposed. And that's not the church deciding that. No. It's the church receiving this from the documentation, the action of the saint. Or Carlo Acutis does the same.
Yes.
Whose miracles have involved young people. So have Pier Giorgio Frassati's, to my knowledge.
And I think that's beautiful is like we see the life that we live also carries on. And like the decisions we make, the actions we make here, like actually we persevere. You know, we don't get like this new superpower just because somebody now is a saint. It's like, once again, this is not Hall of Fame here. They like the life that we live. Actually, it's the same person that lived on this earth that we are declaring a saint.
Yeah, this is really interesting when you talk to the people who knew Michel Dupont.
Oh, yes.
The Focus missionary who's being proposed for canonization. Many people knew Michel in the organization. In Focus, or my good friend Monsignor Shea has talked at length about his relationship and friendship with Michel. And that's delightful to hear the witness of these people who knew this will be, I think, would be someday saint, because it makes the saint so proximate to us. Yeah. And the miracles do that, but also the relationships.
And I think that's so important that we're declaring this person that had these relationships, that lived in this local place, that had these passions on this earth. That's the individual we're, declaring a saint, not some figment, cartoonish, sterilized version. No, it's that person.
Okay, so what's the last step then?
Yeah, so after we confirm one miracle, then the person's elevated to beatification. This is Blessed Michael McGivney. That's why we use that title Blessed, is because they've gone through a beatification process. And then once we get a confirmation of a second miracle, then they're possible for canonization, which would then grant them the title of saint. And they have the possibility of being venerated and celebrated in the church's public worship on the universal scale. When a person is being celebrated as a blessed, or they go through a beatification, they can be celebrated in church's public worship, i.e., they can have a feast day and a saint, but more on a localized set. Yeah. So we have a lot of these individuals in our order. A lot of Dominicans are blessed.
Right. Yeah, true.
And we celebrate their feast days within the order, but it's not universal for the entire church.
Some of them were hanging out as blesseds for a real long time. Sorry, Mark.
Jordan of Saxon.
Oh, he's the worst. Yeah,
I love that, man. We gotta fix that.
He's still just a blessed.
But once a person's been double miracled, right, if we want to call it that, double miracled.
Unless they're martyred.
Unless they're martyred, then that's a different thing. Then, the miracles abound for martyrs. Then they can be canonized as a saint and be universally recognized by the church and venerated in public veneration and public worship. So, yeah.
So what do you think, what kind of advice do you give to people who are interested? You say, well, people looking around in their lives and they say, well, I actually think I might know some saints. I remember a priest saying this to us when we began in our time here in formation at the House of Studies. I remember one of the venerable elders of our community saying to us, "You will live with saints," and that I found that to be true. True. I've been blessed to live with some very holy men in the order. What advice would you give to someone who's encountering a kind of cause or wants to promote the cause of a person who they think is an exemplary model of holiness?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to ask for their intercession and prayer, just as you would ask for your friend. Mm. That's the beauty of the cloud of witnesses that is the communion of saints.
Yeah, Father Gregory has that great moment where he realizes he can ask his mother to pray for him.
Yeah.
When he's talked about that.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
And that's a beautiful gift. And so to not be afraid to continue to have these relationships, ask for their prayer and intercession, and to not be surprised when they respond to you, especially if you've had personal relationships with these individuals. But I also see that we have a certain, there are certain saints that attract us, certain saints that maybe haunt us in the ways. And so be open to that, but to not be afraid of some of these saints, even if they're not yet canonized or not yet beatified. I have I love Father Emil Capon from Wichita, Kansas, the military chaplain. He is not yet beatified or canonized, but I definitely have a devotion to him and I pray for him because his life resonates with me, and I also want to assist in that veneration of his cause. For the good of the people of Wichita, Kansas. I've fallen in love, and I know many people from Wichita, and I think it would be amazing to have one of their own be canonized too, because what a statement that would be. And so that you get this. So I think one of my encouragements is don't be scared off by having a devotion or a prayer life that involves somebody who lived a holy and virtuous life, even if they don't have the letters ST in front of it.
Right. And then to that, I would just add the parallel or the contrary that ultimately canonization and the process thereof is a submission to the church's authority.
Yeah.
And the part of what we open, part of what we present to the church is something to be reviewed. So the diocesan phase, we were talking about how the local bishop, the postulator, the diocesan tribunal, we didn't really get into the weeds of that,
No.
how there's all this kind of sorting that happens. And then in Rome, how you get in the dicastery, the relator who kind of goes through the positio, and then you get that board of theological consultants that pierces through everything. All of this sifting is going on in this process in order to confirm infallibly that this person lived a remarkable life and a life worthy of imitation. So before the church, we have a kind of humility.
Yeah.
And if a cause doesn't go anywhere, we just sort of say, well, this is what it is for now.
Right.
Like I'm anxiously awaiting the day when Rose Hawthorne will be declared a saint.
Right.
The great foundress of the Dominican sisters who care for people with terminal cancer in New York. But we just sort of wait because the Lord in his providence will decide there's going to be a particular moment when the life of Rose will shine for the life of the church. And I think that's the kind of spirit we bring to the process of every canonization.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good point. That is like in the Lord's providence, there will be a time when the life of this individual will shine forth and become more pertinent than what we think it may be right at this moment. And so that kind of submission to the process and submission to the church's authority in her vision, while having radical trust in the Lord and in this process. Like, I think that's a really beautiful approach to have in this.
All you holy men and women, saints of God,
pray for us.
Pray for us.
There it is.
Beautiful. Well, turning to you, the listener, thanks for tuning in to this episode. We really appreciate all of your support for Godsplaining. Those of you that want to make a financial contribution, we'd be very grateful. It does cost us a little bit of money to run this project, so consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can find all the information about that on our website over at godsplaining.org. Also over there at godsplaining.org, you'll find information on upcoming Godsplaining events. We do periodic days of recollection and retreats. You can shop our merch. We have all kinds of great collectibles, which may or may not be appealing to you. And you'll find information about what the Friars are up to. You can stay in touch with us that way. Please like and comment on this episode. Share it if you think someone could benefit from hearing it. Is there a saint you are waiting to see raised to the altar? If there's a saint you want to be canonized, drop his or her name in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear any comments about this episode. We're grateful to those of you who have taken the time to give us a 5-star review and otherwise to promote the podcast. Otherwise, friends, what we ask most of all is that you would pray for us. Please know that we're praying for you. God bless. Father Gregory.
Father Patrick.
Story of a soul or confessions?
Story of a soul.
Imitation of Christ or orthodoxy?
Orthodoxy.
Interior Castle or Father Smith Instructs Jackson?
I don't think I've read either of them.
The Dialogue or Introduction to the Devout Life?
Oh, both? Can I take both on account of the fact that I took neither on the last one?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
I'll allow it. And best of all?
The Bible?
Nice work. Excellent. I thought for sure you were going to say the Summa Theologiae.
Oh, no. Not so easily duped.
Friends, if you are interested in more striking and profound conversations like this one, hit that subscribe button, pound it. Don't miss a piece of this exemplary content.
Yes.